get going. Hello, everyone. I'm Bruce Arbanese. I'm Chair of the Water Resources Commission, and I'm happy to welcome you here tonight for our water system update. We'll be giving you a high-level view of our water system, some of the challenges it faces, some updates, some things around the corner, but most importantly, we'd like an interactive session. So if you have a question during the presentation, please raise your hand. We'll get to it when we can. The Water Resources Commission is made up of a number of volunteers from the town. We have with us Bob Murray, Vice Chair, Peter Weaver, Kristen Jamsky, and Will Ridley, who's our Secretary. The Water Resource Commission has some key priorities. Most importantly, we work with the town to make sure there's sufficient clean water available for the residents. We're also very concerned about water conservation. That's something that we all can participate in. And we're also involved with communications. We monitor a couple of online sites, Facebook, some other sites. And as questions and concerns come in from the public, we respond to those. If necessary, reach out to the town for specific answers. We're also involved with a number of important items that I'd like to mention here. First, in the upper right, we have a rebate program for clothes washers, dishwashers, and low-flow toilets. To get to that, you navigate to the Water Division on the public site, and you'll see that the rebate applications are here on the left side. We're also involved with the annual Rain Barrel event. We've helped Scituate residents purchase hundreds of rain barrels over the last several years. Rain barrels are a great way to conserve water, and especially with, unfortunately, the droughts that we've had, a good way to water outdoor plants during those tough times. I'd like to see a show of hands. How many of you have rain barrels? It's a great show. We have the Rain Barrel event for 2025. Will be, the pickup time will be in April. You'll hear more about how to buy rain barrels in 25 early next year. We also have a desalination technology research committee, a subcommittee, looking at that technology to see if we can feasibly generate clean water for the town. More on that later. Scituate has two main water sources. First is the reservoir system. We all drive down through Yea and through Tap Factory Pond in the main reservoir, and of course, Old Open Bucket Pond at the circle. We also have 6 wells around the town. Now normally, most of the water comes from the wells. During peak periods, the summertime, for example, when we have a lot more residents in town, a lot of renters, folks are washing their cars, watering their lawns, doing typical summer things. The water treatment plant might provide 50% or more of the water that we use. One thing to keep in mind is some of our wells access aquifers which are shared with other communities. And during peak periods, sometimes the water pressure from those wells isn't what we need it to be to get the volumes we care for. Something to keep in mind.
Hi everyone, I'm Will, and I'm the Secretary with the Water Resources Commission. So as Bruce mentioned, we have a lot to support our water, and this is what it looks like in a map form. So if I take you through it a little bit, there's a distribution of approximately 124 miles of water mains, but there's also 8,000 water meters that we have to care for as well. And as part of this water system, we have over 700 fire hydrants that you can see on this map that we have here. So each of the red dots on this map is a fire hydrant, and each of these lines are one of those aisles of water mains that we have, and we have plenty of those. And unfortunately, we have to kind of keep up to date with our water systems. It's very important that we maintain constant maintenance on these systems so that they're reliable and we can rely on them for water when we need them, which is every day of the week.
Hi, Kristen Jansky. I'm going to talk a little bit about what Bruce mentioned earlier. The peak season, if you will, is June, July, August. We have many visitors, some of our own friends and family, and tourists. And so this isn't from this year, but it's meant to show a trend that the thick light blue line going across the middle where July, August, and September are above, July, August, September are above. That's how we normalize the rest of the year. You know, it all evens out, but those 3 months are stressed. And so, you know, we have, this is our demand, and Bruce is going to talk a little bit later about, you know, the supply of water we have. And he mentioned desalination, but there are a few other ways to do that as well. So I'll also come back and talk to you a little bit about how we can conserve the water we have so that, you know, we're not using as much throughout the year, and hopefully we're not using as much during those peak months. So.
Thanks, Kristen. So our water system certainly has its challenges. The biggest one is the current water treatment plant. It was built in the mid-60s, I believe. Typically, facilities like that have about a 30-year lifetime before they need significant upgrades. And ours is unfortunately well past its sell-by date. It's old. The building, frankly, is falling apart to some degree, and there's no redundancy. Now, really need to commend the Water Division for keeping this water plant running, because it's quite old. If a component inside of it fails or is failing, you can't find a direct replacement part. You can find a replacement for the function, but it doesn't plug into our system. So they do a lot of shoehorning, behind the scenes work. The public doesn't see this, but they need to be commended for keeping that water treatment plant running for all of this. The current plant, I should go back to the redundancy, lack of redundancy. Again, if any component in that water treatment plant fails, the plant moves offline. Or if it has to be maintained, the plant moves offline. Obviously, it's not a good situation. The plant also is unable to remove manganese from our water, the main source of brown water in town. Anybody experience brown water? Yeah. So the manganese is a naturally occurring element, and over time, some of the wells were pumped into the reservoir. So the reservoir is filled with manganese, and in the summertime, sometimes it leaches out. And that's why you see more brown water during the summer. The image on the right is something you never want to see. Nobody wants to see rocks in the reservoir, right? You want to see a nice, clear blue, maybe a couple of ripples in the water in your reservoir. Not that. Unfortunately, Scituate has fairly limited surface water capacity, and makes it very susceptible to droughts. If you look at the droughts listed up here, 16, 20, 22, 24, there's a pattern. Next year's an odd year, hopefully we don't have a drought. But they're too frequent. They're much more frequent than they used to be. Now, we moved in 2018, so we didn't experience the drought of 16. But I was told we were down to about 3 days worth of water in the reservoir system before it started to rain again. That was the worst drought apparently. One good thing about the droughts, maybe the only good thing about the droughts, it's kind of top of mind for a lot of residents. So people are doing a better job conserving water, and what we are seeing is the amount of water used average across the town has been going down, actually, over these years. Another issue is a couple of our wells down off Oakland Bucket Road in the marshy area. The berm that surrounds and protects them has been overtopped a few times by salt water. And so that can leach down into the water system as well. And that could increase more because of sea level rise. Another challenge every water system faces is a DEP change. So the federal DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, changed its allowable level for PFAS in April this year from a very low level to a microscopic level. And virtually every town in America is out of compliance. And obviously our water division has to take a look to see how they have to clean up the different sources. I don't know if you saw this, but I think over the weekend I saw that the DEP, federal DEP, is also considering putting on a list a solvent that's been used for about 40 years. And so it's just indicative of the fact that over time, the water system is going to have to address different things in its cleansing process. Here's some updates. Obviously, the big one is a new water treatment plant is underway. We'll be talking about that a little bit more in just a moment. The water division continues to replace old pipes flushing the system as well. You'll see the images on the right side here. The top one is flushing. So they connect to a hydrant and flush out the crud, if you will, in a particular neighborhood. Sometimes when that activity is going on, folks in that neighborhood might get groundwater as well because the water's stirred up a bit. But it should go away in 10 to 15 minutes. The middle picture there, it's hard to see on the screen here, but it's probably 60% filled with crud. Unbelievable. But the town is really focused on replacing old pipe, and that's really helped reduce the frequency with which groundwater complaints have come in. As was mentioned before, we're actively looking at different ways to increase our water supply. The town is looking at different wells. They've drilled a few sites already. They're looking at some other sites to drill, looking for a valid, usable new well. We're also involved with desalination technology. I mentioned that before. We're actually meeting tomorrow with some folks from MIT to talk about this. And there are a couple of options that we have as far as this tech is concerned. One would be pure desalination plant. Just desalinate water and push it into either into our water system or up to the new water treatment plant. Another option is to deflect water from the sewer plant, the wastewater from the sewer plant. And the first step would be to replace non-potable or non-drinkable water use. Washing cars, washing boats, and irrigation of golf courses, etc. So there's a bunch of water that's used in town, not for drinking, that we could replace in this way. So the process would be to take water out of the wastewater plant, clean it up some more, and then use it in a non-potable way. Interestingly, we've been told that the water coming out of our wastewater plant is actually cleaner than the water in the North River. Interesting. But over time, going beyond the non-potable use, we have the potential to move that water after it gets cleaned up coming out of the wastewater plant to pump it into the new water treatment plant. How do you feel about that? How do folks feel about eventually drinking water that didn't come out of the wastewater plant? Any reaction? Some giggles? We'll see.
Well, Bruce, you're, a lot of the town is running septic systems.
Yes.
And that goes into our aquifer. So,
Yes. Right, the leaching of the soil theoretically is cleaning the water appropriately before it gets into the aquifer and comes up through our wells. But it'll be interesting to see if this becomes a viable potential opportunity. But obviously, it's going to take some time for folks to get used to that. The other thing we're looking at too in terms of water capacity is increasing our reservoir, increasing the size of the reservoir. A couple of things. First, apparently the dam in the reservoir is non-compliant with the 100-year flood event. And so we have to repair or replace the dam. It needs to be widened and thickened. So there's a project underway to look to see how that would happen. At the same time, we've asked that the reservoir be raised. And based on some prior studies, I should say, it was determined that about 18 inches was as high as we could raise the reservoir before we might impact Route 3A. So that's under consideration at this point. We'll see how that turns out. Also, some folks in the town are interested in to see if they can dredge the reservoir, actually go down and create additional capacity that way. To do that, you have to kind of coffer off parts of the reservoir. You don't want to take the reservoir completely offline for a period of time. We couldn't afford that. So that's going to take some real planning and thought, but they're looking at that as well. Again, we have limited surface water. We need other sources as the population of the town continues to increase. One other thing on the horizon is a third water storage tank. We currently have 2 tanks. One is on Maple Street, the hill on Maple Street, another one, the hill on Creelman. And they're old and need maintenance. So the town is looking at siting a third tank. We need 2 tanks to maintain proper water pressure throughout the town, not just for our taps, but in case of emergency, fire. So they're looking to create a third tank so they can take the individual tanks off one at a time to maintain. You'll be hearing more about that over the next couple of years. And now, turn it back over to Will.
All right, so a very popular topic in the town these days is the new water treatment plant. So I'm here to provide a little bit of insight on the current status. So the new plant will have redundancy. This is the important redundancy that Bruce was mentioning that we need to have in our water system. And it will take out manganese and other impurities, and most importantly, PFAS, because the current plant cannot handle PFAS to the federal requirements that are more recently mandated. The expectation that some wells will have their water pumped back into the new plant to remove these PFAS. And others may require additional processing on-site to remove these PFAS, so that will be figured out in the near future. And the goal is to have the new plant online by the end of the year in 2027. But currently, the ground has been broken and some concrete is being poured with the expectation that through the rest of the winter, concrete will continue to be poured as long as the weather remains good to the employees of the DPW. So yeah.
And before we get to the questions, I did want to pop back over to the Water Division page and just mention, in case you haven't found this yet, that there are updates on the new water treatment plant on this page as well. So if you're interested, please check that out on a regular basis. Okay, What questions do you have for us? Yeah, Vicki?
Do you have a sense of how successful the rebate program has been?
Yeah, the rebate program has been very successful. It got to the point where they ran out of money, but additional money has been approved. And I would encourage anyone watching this video, if you're interested in getting a rebate, to execute your purchase as soon as you can, because it's a popular program.
That's great.
Other questions?
What's the status of well 17?
Well 17A, at one point was taken offline a few years ago because of very high manganese levels. But the town got funding approval through the residents to build a facility right at the well site. And so there's a green sand filter in place there. So that green sand filter is cleaning the manganese out of the water. So that well is back and active.
Because there were some issues, I know some of the neighbors have to still buy water. Because of the.
That's interesting. That's something I did not know about.
So I didn't know if that's about 6 months ago, was it some other, the select board. So I didn't know if any progress had been made with that. They didn't really know, it seemed to be, they had no solution at the time, so.
Interesting. Well, we'll find out about that and get back with us. Get back with you, I should say. So, because that's an open question, I'm going to ask you to fill out this form. Just give us your name and email address so that we can get the answer back to you. Other questions? Okay, so I think there are a couple of things that we haven't covered here yet. I mentioned that we monitor a couple of sites, and these are the kinds of questions that have come in over time. First of all, is our water safe? You know, obviously we've talked about the PFAS issue, so that's something new just this year. But Situate water is tested in according to Mass DEP requirements. So some tests are done on a weekly basis, others on a daily basis. And their annual reports that are posted on that water division page that I've showed you a couple of times here. We've talked about discolored water. We've talked about in the summer months, some of the manganese leaches back out into the reservoir, and that gets pumped through our system, unfortunately. The final bullet on here talks about typically what happens after flushing. If they're in your neighborhood doing flushing, you may see some discoloration of water for a temporary period of time. Last bullet here I really want to highlight because it again talks to our water division and the work they do to update our water system. So many towns have leakage in their water system of 30% of it. And Situate was in that situation 10 or more years ago. But they really focused on this particular issue to reduce leakage, which is a good way to think about it is they're conserving water this way, right? So a few years ago, it was down to 22%, and as of last year, 23, it was brought below 9%, which is very low compared to towns in the area. In Situate, water system won an award from Mass DEP. So again, we commend them for the good job they do. So if you have any issues with groundwater, there's a phone number there to call, but more effectively, this email address is monitored on a regular basis. It's groundwater@situatema.gov. So if you have groundwater issues, please send your email to that email address. And now, turn back to Kristen, talk about how we conserve water.
So this is a really exciting part for me because It's what I can do, it's what we can do. And just to give you a few facts to put some of the terms you heard in context, in the world of our total water supply, 0.5% of that is drinkable. So that is alarming in and of itself, correct? And then, I was reading, I think it was the World Economic Forum, they had a statistic that said by 2030 that our demand for water is supposed to exceed our supply by 40%. That scares me. And if you check out the Nature Conservancy, if you check out the UN's SDG goals, you hear this in many places. And so what I think about is, so I don't get so overwhelmed by all of those numbers. I have to take it back to what can I do today. And there are, a few things that we can do. We know that we're going to continue to have visitors. We know that, tourism is big here. That's good. It fuels our growth. But we also know people will continue to build homes. People will continue to expand homes. People will continue to build accessory dwelling units. So, even if our demand is going down slightly, or it has gone down over the past few years, it will continue to be tested. And so when I think about all of the audiences, like all of the people in our community who can help, I think about the different communities we touch. I think about the people that I'm friends with, the groups that I'm a part of, and the people I have conversations with. They're different than the people that you do. And if you're involved in different companies or schools, everyone has communities. And so, a few things, personally, my love is land and water conservation. And in terms of land, how can we treat our land, which is critical to preserving our water? How can we treat our land better? We can plant native plants. We can, plant drought-resistant plants. We can, you'll all show up in April for our rain barrel event, and we can hook up rain barrels and conserve more water. And inside the house, if you don't have a huge dishwasher load, run the quick cycle. Take a few minutes off your shower. You don't need to run the water while brushing your teeth. Even these are small things that kids can learn. And oftentimes, I was sharing a story with the group before where the student was teaching his parent a lesson and keeping the parent accountable. So, we all have an impact. And so a few other ways, Bruce mentioned the Water Sense program. Definitely, easy way to cut down, eliminate leaks in your home. And be mindful of when we're in a drought, or say different restrictions start to go in place at different levels. Be aware that if we're at a 2, we may be going to a 3. So the other thing is that it's important to me is protecting our untouched land, because that acts as a carbon sink. It pulls carbon out of the atmosphere, and so that helps reduce our carbon footprint as well. So lots of ways to help.
Thanks, Kristen. Okay, thanks everybody. At this point, we're going to call that a wrap.